Are the best 1% this country produces. I was stunned and brokenhearted at what I saw a member of Congress doing.
The Congresswoman, Frederica Wilson, continues to attack the White House, now saying that it is full of racists, it is full of white supremacists.
Everything is not an ist. Not every decision or everything is a victimhood.
Former Attorney General Loretta Lynch met today with lawmakers on Capitol Hill.
Attorney General Lynch, did you direct Director Comey to call the Clinton email investigation a matter?
For Republican leaders on Capitol Hill, it is all systems go on tax reform.
What I would wear to the inaugural ball was the last thing on my mind. I'm so honored and grateful to become part of this history.
I doubt I'd be here if it weren't for social media. When somebody says something about me, I'm able to go bing, 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 and I take care of it. The other way, I'd never be able to get the word out.
Good morning. Welcome to Fox and Friends Weekend with the lovely Abby Huntsman, of course.
Oh, but someone far more important than me. Jason Sehorn is on the couch all weekend.
I love how you treat guests. That's so nice.
Only for you, actually.
I forgot to bring the welcome binder, though, which I normally bring.
I know. You're running cold this morning. You have
the Fox and Friends welcome binder that you're supposed to read before you host, and I forgot to give it to you today. So you have an excuse if it doesn't go well.
Or I have a reason as to why it worked out.
Yeah, that's right.
It could go either way.
You ignored the binder. It's true.
Well, you're an hour in, 3 hours to go. How you feeling?
Awake now, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the lights in the first hour kind of get you going. That 4 o'clock wake-up call is a little tough.
Yeah, but you have dealt with more pressure than any of us sitting here, and so this is probably nothing.
You know what's crazy about that? People talk about pressure in athletics, but that's what you do, and so you never feel the pressure in those moments because it's what you're comfortable doing, and then you get into an environment like this where it's not your everyday routine, so then all of a sudden you feel pressure, then all of a sudden you feel something that's to where you're out of your element a bit. But when you're on the field playing, there's no pressure.
Good point.
It's just another day for you.
You're confident.
In case you don't know, in case you're not a football fan, he was a defensive back for the New York Giants for many years in the NFL. And we've got a video we're going to play later on the show of some highlights. But the first highlight video they made for you, there were too many completions for the other team happening in the video. And we're like, how are we not putting interceptions in here? Because you had dozens in the NFL.
Yeah, that's probably not the highlight video you want to see with them actually making completions.
It's like, why is Michael Irvin catching passes in this highlight video?
Well, that is something to stick around for, but it's great to have you here, Jason. And, of course, there is a lot of news, as there always is when we wake up on a Saturday morning. And the Democratic Congresswoman, Frederica Wilson, is only escalating her attacks on the White House, on President Trump, and the Gold Star father, John Kelly, the general who, of course, gave that really emotional, memorable press briefing earlier this week, saying that the White House is now full of racists, they're full of white supremacists. Here is a quote coming from the New York Times. She spoke to them yesterday. She said the White House itself is full of white supremacists. They're making themselves look like fools. They have no credibility. They are trying to assassinate my character, and they are assassinating their own because everything they say is coming out and shown to be a lie.
Yeah, so now we're making blanket statements about people, entire groups of people being white supremacists and racist. This, of course, comes after the president called a grieving widow, asked for advice from General Kelly, who himself served in the military for 40 years and is a Gold Star father himself. Yes, what do I say? The president included in that statement a recognition, hey, these guys sign up for this, which is a very common parlance. We talk about it in the military. So this congresswoman was in the car, overheard the conversation, and then immediately attacked the White House. Then you see John Kelly take to the podium and explain exactly what happened. He used a phrase about an empty barrel, which we'll get to in a second, which apparently triggered this congresswoman and it made her accuse all of them of being racists. And while she also declared herself a rock star, by the way, for all the attention that she's getting.
The problem here I have is we throw this word racist out a lot. How about discriminatory? Maybe you feel like they're discriminatory, but for you to call somebody racist, you better have information and facts, not because you don't like their opinion or where they phrase something. Like discriminatory, fine. We can debate that one.
Can be that, sure.
But to flat out come out and call someone a white supremacist, like the White House is full of them, or a racist, like this is very strong, and I think we just throw it out way too liberally now.
Because there's a lot behind those words, and we need to be very careful. We need to be thoughtful whenever we do decide to use them.
It's just too easy to go, oh, he's white, he's a racist, and that's why he did this.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, even after that press conference with General Kelly, there were a lot of people that were criticizing him, coming out talking about what he went through with losing his own son in Afghanistan, what it means to be a Gold Star family, what he went through, but also how we should be thinking about, how we should be talking about it as a country. And still, people found ways to criticize him coming out.
The resist movement has no shame and will play the race-based identity politics whenever they can, including Joy Reid, who is a host on another network. She tweeted this. Get a look at this. Kelly, General Kelly, grew up in segregated Boston, in an Irish Catholic neighborhood where women were bullied, not honored, and blacks scorned and rejected. So if you think that's bad, then listen to some sound from one of her colleagues, Lawrence O'Donnell. He said this on his program. Listen.
John Kelly never sat beside a student like Frederica Wilson in his elementary school. The language about black people in John Kelly's white neighborhood was exactly the same language about black people that was used at that time in white communities in the segregated South. I know the neighborhood John Kelly comes from. I know the culture. It was a neighborhood in which calling someone who looked like Frederica Wilson an empty barrel was the kindest thing that would have been said about her. You know what wasn't sacred when he was a kid growing up, where he was growing up? Black women. He took time, a lot of extra time, to call a black woman who he doesn't know and he doesn't like an empty barrel.
For Lawrence O'Donnell, it's all about a white man and a black woman. That's the only lens through which he could think about that statement.
You know who General Kelly sat next to in his life? He sat next to the very best of this country.
Black,
the people
white.
that are serving this country. And you know what? There is no color, there is no race background for who serves this country. Everyone across the board.
Here's what blows me away, though. How does he know who John Kelly sat next to in school? How does he know, what his neighborhood was like because he's stereotyping something? He's simply coming up with what he thinks this Boston neighborhood was based on. Did he grow up there? Was he raised in that neighborhood? Was he going to those schools? And the other thing I don't like is because you're from an environment does not mean that environment creates you.
Defines you forever.
It doesn't make you who you are. It's just where you're from. It's where you came from. But doesn't mean that if the neighborhood is discriminatory, doesn't mean you are.
It's such a great point. Isn't that what this country is about?
He just said all of Boston is basically racist.
Of course. But Jason, this is almost how they see the world, right? They look at a Trump supporter and say, if you support President Trump, you must be a racist. You must be a white supremacist. It's a race to the bottom of stereotyping, of putting people in a box. It's because they don't like General Kelly, because General Kelly's enabling President Trump, who they've been resisting from the beginning, because the media is not mainstream at all. A lot of it is out to do nothing but attack this president. This is just an extension of that. And they found a nice, cozy box of a black congresswoman attacking a white man, and they make the narrative all about that. And they go all the way to the background. So if you came from a bad place, you're bad forever?
All the way to his childhood, and just simply saying, oh, I know where he was born, so I know how he is.
He was born in Boston.
Lawrence O'Donnell was born in Boston, but what General Kelly was saying when he talked about the empty barrel and referring to the congresswoman there, he was saying that there's not much to back up what she's talking about, and just another pat on the back for herself. She's making the story about herself when General Kelly's saying this is about something much bigger than all of us. And that's what is so heartbreaking about how this week has unfolded and how the conversation has been had. It has been about this nonsense when really it's about the men and women who fight for all of us to be able to live the lives that we want to live.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrifying. I think this is the very worst of our society.
It was a call to a family who lost a son, killed in the line of duty. That's it. Move on. Right. He called, offered condolences, and now they're criticizing in the way which he offered those condolences. No, and then the empty barrel comment is just an empty barrel. If you roll it down the road, makes a lot of noise, but there's nothing in it. That's all he's saying. It's like just a lot of noise. It's just noise, and that's what this is. It's noise. Our president, called somebody, offered condolences, and is being criticized for the way in which he did it. No, just move on.
Absolutely. And I think if you're in the White House, if you're President Trump, if you're General Kelly, you get endlessly frustrated with a media narrative built against you. But President Trump, he had an interview with Maria Bartiromo that's going to air on Sunday Morning Futures tomorrow. He talked about his ability to go over that media narrative with a new tool. You know it. It's called Twitter. Take a listen.
I doubt I'd be here if it weren't for social media, to be honest with you, because there is a fake media out there. I get treated very unfairly by the media, and I have a tremendous platform. I think I have 125 million people between Twitter and Instagram and all of them, and Facebook. I have a tremendous platform. So when somebody says something about me, I'm able to go bing, 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 and I take care of it. The other way, I'd never be able to get the word out.
I don't know if all of his advisors love the bing, bing, bing.
Bing, bing, bong, bing, bing, bong.
But it's actually interesting to hear from him how he thinks about Twitter, because that's oftentimes how we get much of where his thoughts are on things and what's going on behind closed doors of the White House, because you're not always getting the truth in the media. You're not always getting the facts.
I'm just happy to hear that there are actually people telling him not to do it. Because I always wonder, like, is there somebody not telling pause button? You know, think about that one before you
sure there
hit
are.
send. Well, there are. He said there were. He goes, I don't listen to him. I'm doing it my way because that's how I got elected.
Of course.
Okay.
No,
but the bing, bing, bing.
But that's great. But think about, you know what the other noise is? Bing, 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 is heads exploding in liberal newsrooms across this island every morning when he tweets what he believes, and they have to report on it, and they don't get to be the filter on it. No, that's what's wonderful. That's what Middle America loves about this guy. He gets to speak his own voice.
What's so hard, though, is it's only 47 characters, right?
No,
and
it's
so
147?
Whatever it is.
Whatever it is, but there's only so much you can put in there. So when you're talking about things like North Korea, or
that's when he does the ... So he can do one and
so if you're a reporter and it's your job to sort of figure out exactly what's going on here, it's frustrating. You know, it's
I love
what's behind this tweet.
I love frustrated
Oh,
reporters.
it keeps us going in the mornings. That is for sure.
Let us know. Do you like the president's tweets? Should he keep tweeting or not? Friends@foxnews.com, or any other commentary on what we've been talking about this morning.
All right, to some other headlines we're following, starting with a Fox News alert, and a man with a knife goes on a stabbing rampage, injuring 4 people in Germany. Police now arresting a suspect, working to determine if he is the attacker. 6 people were attacked in downtown Munich. 4 of them have been wounded. 2 were able to escape. None of those victims have life-threatening injuries, thank goodness. Officers now telling residents to stay inside. The motive still remains unclear. We'll keep a close eye on that this morning. And a federal appeals court blocks an illegal immigrant teen from getting an abortion. Well, for now, the U.S. Court of Appeals in D.C. given a 17-year-old who is now 15 weeks pregnant more time to find a way to get the procedure. The government now has until October 31st to release the teen into the custody of an approved sponsor who could help her go through with that abortion. If that does not happen, the case goes back to a lower court judge. Also, this President Trump expected to block the release of classified files on former President John F. Kennedy's assassination. That is according to reports by Politico, who say the commander-in-chief is likely to intervene before next Thursday, when the National Archives is expected to release nearly 3,100 classified documents from the 1990s about what happened on that fatal day. Trump officials fear the documents could jeopardize national security operations.
Wow.
That is interesting.
That won't lead to more conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I mean, think that's something. Just leave it alone.
Just release it. And wow, amazing. That story that never ends. Well, remember the group behind that fake Russian Trump dossier? Now they're trying to block you from finding out who bankrolled them, and then who put them up to creating it. Our next guest says he was targeted by that very same Fusion GPS group.
Plus, Hillary Clinton finally opening up about that controversial uranium deal with Russia, and she's now blaming Fox News.
Yep.
Really? Got more on that coming up.
Did you blame that on the misspelling of the red button, too? I mean, that wasn't spelled right. Welcome back to Fox and Friends. The company behind the controversial Trump dossier headed to court trying to block Congress from reading its bank records. Those records could reveal who paid for that hit piece dossier, and then that was then against candidate Donald Trump. And still, tactics like that, nothing new to folks at Fusion GPS. Earlier this week, several representatives from the group refused to testify on Capitol Hill. They all pleaded the Fifth. My next guest is not surprised by any of this. He says he's been in the crosshairs of Fusion GPS before. Venezuelan journalist Alec Boyd joins me now from London. Alec, thank you very much for joining us this morning. If you would, Americans are familiar with Fusion GPS because of this Trump dossier that was used, that's been discredited. You have done reporting in Venezuela that has brought you into the crosshairs of Fusion GPS, or at least a client of theirs. Talk a little bit about what happened to you.
Well, I was targeted on a very vicious smear campaign due to my work exposing a very corrupt group of individuals and businessmen from Venezuela. Fusion GPS was retained by this group of people from Venezuela, basically to try and quash any further reporting and any further exposing and criticism of the activities of this group of Venezuelan entrepreneurs in inverted commas.
Yeah, you were investigating potentially billions of dollars of illegal activity. But when you talk about a smear campaign, we're not talking about small stuff here. I mean, they went after you. They went after your family. They went after your character. We've got some visuals we'll put online of things they said about you online. You could go on, I'm sure, for hours talking about it, but give us some of the worst of the worst. What did they do to you?
Well, they basically try and portray me as the worst Venezuelan criminal to come out of that country after Carlos the Jackal. They said that I was a pedophile. They said that I was involved in drug trafficking. I'm also a car thief. I'm also an extortionist. I'm also homosexual, irresponsibly spreading AIDS around. The most vicious and baseless arguments that you could possibly say about a person were said about me. And all this campaign was posted online after I had a break in my apartment here in London.
Wow.
After which I realized that they stole my computers. They stole 2 laptops computers from my flat. And then after I started investigating that event, I realized that they had been following me in London and my family for months. So obviously, this is the kind of work that Fusion GPS assist others doing.
You're saying they traffic in lies. Their smears are lies, and they'll do anything to discredit an opponent, including, you might say, gather fake facts and put them in a dossier if they were hired to do that.
As far as I'm concerned, that's all they do. They don't peddle truth, veracity, facts. They peddle propaganda. They peddle fake information. When they don't find, because they call themselves an opposition research firm, where they don't find facts that will cast in a negative light the topic of their research, they just invent them. They just make them up.
Make them up. Fake news, you might call it. Alec Boyd, thank you for sharing your side of the story. No wonder these jokers are pleading the fifth. They don't know what the truth is because they haven't been trafficking in it for a very long time. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. All right, still ahead. Beware of traveling to the United States. The warning that Canada and other countries are giving to their citizens. And wait until you hear why. And no trick or treat. Nope, not for you. Schools across the country are canceling Halloween because some students, they feel left out. Are they going too far? You think? Our parenting panel here to discuss the latest politically correct nonsense next. As the numbers fall down, we bring you back to Fox & Friends Weekend. Time for news by the numbers. First, 27. That's the total number of dresses worn by First Ladies that are now part of the Smithsonian collection in Washington, D.C. First Lady Melania Trump giving her inaugural ball gown this week. Next, 5. That's how many former U.S. presidents are teaming up to raise money today. George H.W. Bush, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Jimmy Carter headlining a hurricane relief concert called One America Appeal in Texas. Pretty cool. And finally, 7. That's how many games it's going to take to determine who will go to the World Series from the AL. The Houston Astros shutting down the New York Yankees 7-1 in Game 6, setting up the final showdown in Houston. That game begins tonight at 8:08 p.m. Eastern. And the final number 31, the number worn by Jason Sehorn for the New York Giants. Over to you.
A good reminder. Thank you so much, Pete. Well, here's a scary thought for you. Schools across the country are now canceling Halloween. Why?
According to one principal, the costume parade is out of our ordinary routine and can be difficult for many students. Also, the parade is not inclusive of all the students, and it's our goal each and every day to ensure all students' individual differences are respected.
So what
Have
do
we gone
parents,
too far?
well, that is a good question. What do parents think about this? Here to discuss, child and adolescent family therapist Darby Fox and Tom Kirsting, psychotherapist and author of Disconnected, How to Reconnect Our Digitally Distracted Kids. I need to read that one.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so the three of you are parents. I'm soon to be parents. So
yeah, not yet. You don't have to read that book yet.
But hey, I'm now realizing I'm going to be raising a kid in a different world than I grew up in because I wore Halloween costumes every year to school.
Yeah, kids love it. I mean, it's a pastime. And it kind of bothers me when I hear these stories because it's like, where does it end? Or